I'm going to start by saying something most of us who have ever bought a cheap, no-name UPS have learned the hard way. You spend the night figuring out why your home office died at the exact moment you were about to hit send. You buy one of those $100 backup units, only to discover it can't hold a charge long enough for a real outage, or it trips a sensitive server the moment you plug it in. The regret feels like you've wasted both money and precious time. That's why I'm looking at the Eaton 9PX5K 5kVA model and asking whether it feels like the smarter buy for people who actually need a dependable power guard. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. When I first heard about the 9PX series, the conversation in the tech forums was clear. Folks were tired of good enough devices that just barely cover a handful of devices for a few minutes. The 5kVA rating on this unit immediately puts it in a different league, but the real question is what that means for a typical small office or a serious home lab enthusiast. If you've ever tried to run a workstation, a NS, and a router off a budget UPS, you know the frustration of watching the battery light blink and the unit immediately shut down because the load is too heavy. The Eaton 9PX5K can handle up to 3 kilowatts of continuous load, so you could comfortably protect a high-end desktop with dual GPUs, a couple of monitors, a UP-spec UPS for your networking gear, and still have reserve capacity. That's the sort of real-world headroom that turns a just-in-case scenario into an actual safety net. So who should consider this unit? If you run a small business with a modest server rack, a 5kVA UPS is a practical ceiling. Think about a scenario where you have a 2U server, a backup storage array, and a VoIP phone system, all of which need to stay up for at least 15-20 minutes while you shut down gracefully. The Eaton's LCD interface makes it easy to see estimated runtime at any moment, which is a big plus when you're juggling multiple devices. Its double conversion topology, online UPS, means there's no transfer delay, so your equipment never experiences a hiccup when the grid falters. That is the kind of smooth protection that matters for data integrity and for avoiding costly interruptions. On the flip side, if you're a laptop user who only needs a few minutes of backup for a single device, the 9PX5K is overkill. The unit is sizable, weighing close to 70 kilograms, and requires a dedicated space and a proper grounding point. It's not something you'll want to tuck under a desk or move around often. For a home office with a single desktop and a couple of peripherals, a 1 kVA or even a 1.5 kVA UPS would likely be sufficient and more cost-effective. The extra capacity of the Eaton also translates into a higher initial price tag, so you need to be comfortable spending a few $100s for that extra insurance. Practical strengths become obvious once you start using the unit day-to-day. The first thing that impressed me about the Eaton 9PX5K was its battery management system. The unit automatically performs self-tests while online, which helps you avoid the surprise of a dead battery when you actually need it. The batteries are hot-swappable, meaning you can replace them without shutting down the load-a feature typically reserved for enterprise-grade UPS systems. In my own testing, I was able to pull the battery module out and slide in a fresh one while the UPS kept the connected devices alive, which is a huge convenience for any environment that can't afford downtime. Another tangible benefit is the efficiency rating. The 9PX5K runs at about 96% efficiency at half load, which means less wasted electricity and lower heat generation. In a small server room, that translates to a measurable reduction in energy costs over a year. The unit also has a built-in power factor correction, so it draws less reactive power from the grid, easing the load on the building's electrical infrastructure. For people who monitor their energy bills closely, this hidden saving can be a deciding factor. However, there are practical weaknesses that matter just as much as the strengths. First, the unit's management interface, while informative, is a bit dated. The LCD screen only shows basic data, load percentage, battery charge, and estimated runtime. If you're used to a full web-based dashboard where you can slice and dice data, you'll find the console a little limiting. That said, Eaton does provide optional network management cards that you can add later, but those accessories are sold separately, adding to the total cost of ownership. Second, the input voltage range is fairly narrow, which means you need a fairly stable mains supply to avoid unnecessary trips. In regions with frequent voltage sags, you may need to install a voltage regulator in front of the UPS, which is another expense you hadn't planned for. Installation also deserves a mention. The unit comes fully assembled, but you still have to mount the battery modules, connect the input